Okay, so coming into One Piece Film Red, I had some reservations, I'm not gonna lie. Part of me was like, dog, there looks like there's gonna be a lot of singing in this film. On top of that, the marketing kind of was pushing forth that, yo, dog, this could be very well a musical. And not that I have anything against musicals, but when I go to see a One Piece movie, kind of want to see a One Piece movie, you know what I'm saying? And as of the recording of this video, I just got done watching the One Piece movie in theaters about maybe 2 hours ago, so a lot is fresh on my mind. Let's get into whether or not it's worth your time. I want to put a disclaimer before we get into anything else with this movie that I saw this movie in English dub.
Hey, that's one hell of a crowd.
Uta's never done a show in person before, so this is kind of a big deal.
I went with my kids. Yeah, we had to go watch in dub, and while some of the voices like Zoro and Sanji, like some of the voices are okay, I'm already used to them. One in particular I was not fond of. As a matter of fact, the one that I was not fond of was the only one that I was like, oh god, and that was Bartolomeo. Bartolomeo in this movie, the dub voice actor, just kind of felt like, I don't know what I imagined a dub version of Bartolomeo would sound like, but not like that. Otherwise, the only thing that I found out of pocket in terms of English dub wise was the fact that the main character, or one of the main characters of the film, Uta, is a singer, and she was actually casted by somebody, Amy Lee, that she is also a singer, yet all of the music is in its original Japanese format, so it was kind of a little awkward going from English, but then when she sings in Japanese. Like, why not have Amy Lee do all of these songs over in English? Not that I'm complaining about the music, mind you, because this film, hands down, I'm gonna just throw it straight to you. In comparison to all of the other One Piece films, it definitely is very different, but not in a bad way. Because it feels like they were trying something a little bit different with this film, and I'm gonna tell you off rip that they succeeded in a lot of areas. To give you a brief synopsis of what this film is about, essentially this girl named Uta is a massive pop star. Over the last 2 years in particular, she has rose to the top of being this mega icon, so to speak, for being an incredible performer and being able to sing beautifully. The movie starts with the Straw Hats at her concert. There's a whole bunch of people there, but the Straw Hats in particular are there enjoying her concert when suddenly Luffy jumps over and is like, oh hey, remember me? And pretty much her and Luffy have known each other since childhood because she is... It's not really a spoiler, I mean majority of the promo and trailers have said this anyway, but spoiler alert I guess. This girl Uta is apparently Shanks's daughter, and a lot of pirates were there to actually kidnap her, not even realizing, wait a minute, that's Shanks's daughter? Like, they already wanted to grab her because, dog, she has the hearts of millions. People love her. Like, this would be a crazy ransom. Now that they find out that's Shanks' daughter, the money, the bag. And so one thing leads to another, where we basically find out the ability and the extent of the ability that Uta has that basically makes her somewhat of a dangerous foe. And so now that we got the basic premise out the way of what this movie is about, let's talk art and animation. I mean, is there really a reason? Flat out, it looked beautiful. It looked absolutely gorgeous. The action pieces looked great. The characters always looked on par, and it looked like what a One Piece film is supposed to look like. In terms of art and animation, there is not even a snivel to say other than it looked gorgeous, especially with the colors, because it kind of blends in from time to time. You go from either Uta's colorful, oh my god, this is beautiful, rosy look, then you go to, I guess you would say, reality, which is very dark and grim. So art and animation, check. Music, while there was quite a bit of it, because this is definitely a different type of One Piece film, music was fantastic and very meaningful. Like, it was really on point with a lot of the musical choices, partially due to the way the narrative is presented, because essentially, yes, one of the elephants in the room that a lot of people want to know, Fornev, tell me, am I walking into a musical? What's happening here? There are quite a few musical bits, I'm not going to deny it. There was, maybe I'm going to throw a ballpark anywhere from 5 to 10, probably closer to 10 musical bits where they broke out into song, but honestly, it fits very well because one of the main things about this film is that the main antagonist, so to speak, Uta, her devil fruit ability has to do with singing. So her singing kind of plays very well into this whole musical aspect, but it isn't obnoxious, it isn't jarring. There aren't times where I'm just like, oh my god, more music, shut up already. I never felt that personally. In fact, I was like, wow. Because when you're watching this film, I highly recommend you go and you read the lyrics of when Uta's singing, because I feel like it's very important. It gives you massive insight into either her character, what's going on in this scene, or just in general, even I feel a little bit of foreshadowing into the events of everything that's going down. The cast of characters that they chose for this movie was interesting. I would have expected, considering this movie came out right around the peak of the whole Kaido and Luffy situation. In fact, I think it's still going on in the anime right now, the whole Wano situation. I would have expected to see more of those type of characters. Mainly, we got some of Big Mom's children. We see Big Mom in the film, but we get some of her children. We get Katakuri. That was kind of dope as well. Of course, we get Law in this movie. You gotta have Law, fan favorite. We get some of the Marines like Kobe, Helmeppo, Bartolomeo, and some of those people are thrown in the mix too, which I ain't gonna lie, I was happy to see him. My dub experience was not the happiest, but nevertheless, it was cool to see him, and still makes me think like he would have made a cool Straw Hat. I'm just saying. Also, having the world government in the mix of things was a nice twist and a nice blend. Seeing the 5 Gorosei, there was a lot of elements of characters that I was like, wow, it makes it feel a lot more important than you would expect for a One Piece film, because you have all of these grandiose characters involved. Admiral Fujitora, you got Kizaru, like you got heavy hitters. You even got Akainu really going in with his orders, like trying to demolish this whole situation. But of course, one of the questions I'm going to answer for you right now, one of the big questions on a lot of people's minds is, how much of Shanks are we getting in this film? Keep it real, ForneverWorld. How much are we going to see? Is it just going to be a flash in the pan? I'm going to say right now, based off what I remember, slightly more than a fourth of the film has Shanks. Definitely the entirety of the final act has Shanks in it, and maybe a little bit more than that, and some sporadic flashbacks from time to time that are amazingly done have Shanks. So it's not just that you're gonna see him for a couple of minutes and that's the end of it. Shanks is very heavy in the finale of this film. It's almost as if it builds up to Shanks showing up, and he's not just here for a few minutes. Like, he's here for quite a bit of time, and he's very pivotal to things. Like him showing up, just imagine like an arc that builds up to eventually seeing a character. That's kind of how this movie played it off, and it did it very well. Because before we get into spoiler territory, I'm gonna let you know straight off the rip how I personally feel about this film in comparison to all the previous One Piece films, which I've mainly seen Strong World on. So I've seen Strong World, Film Z, Film Gold, Stampede. I also saw a couple of the recap films, the one of Alabasta, the Chopper one. So those are mainly the films I've seen, and I usually only judge from Strong World on, because that's when Oda started being very pivotal to these films. And I'm going to tell you straight up and down right now, based off of my raw emotion, based off of how I feel coming off of this film, I'm going to say something outlandish that people are probably going to take, and I don't know what. I feel like this is the best One Piece film we've gotten thus far. Like, I really genuinely feel like it broke boundaries. It continued on with giving you incredible storytelling. It gave you characters that you desperately want to see, even especially in the manga, let alone a movie. Like, it really delivered so many different aspects. And if I compare it to some of the previous films, Stampede was dope, getting a little bit more into the whole Roger situation, but it wasn't like Film Red for me. Then the previous film before that, Film Gold, I wasn't a fan of like that anyway. It was enjoyable, but in comparison, better than Film Gold. The one film that for me personally, or maybe even I could throw two films, because Strong World was a very incredible film as well, and Film Z, and in comparison, I would put it above Strong World, and maybe in a couple weeks to a month, I might say, nah, Film Z is still the best film, because I absolutely adore and love everything about that film. But my raw, right now emotion, after watching it a couple hours ago, I would even put it above Film Z. It just felt like it tried something and succeeded so well. It's not a musical, but it has aspects of it. It's not canon per se to the manga, but it definitely feels straight out of the manga. It feels like Oda wrote this for the manga, and the movie was like, hey, can we use that plot line? And he was like, I bet, whatever, go ahead, I'm a genius anyway. The characters were all on point. Uta was an interesting and amazing, fresh and new character, and just in general, I absolutely love the movie from top to bottom, from the aesthetics, the art, the animation, the music, the plot itself, the reveals, the twists. It was fantastic. But now I want to get into spoilers, so there's your warning. I'm about to talk about some heavy things that happened in this movie, and honestly, what I really felt this movie was telling in other aspects of the story as well. Because just keeping it real, I feel like this movie was 100% an allegory or a metaphor for the true realities of music, the effects music has on people, the music industry as a whole, and a lot of those variables. Because for starters, Uta, again, she is a lonely singer. So if you think of the modern day already, like a good majority of singers or artists in general is singing about, you know, I'm sad and blah blah blah. Like, that's a lot of music that you get nowadays of people being sad. Uta's very sad. Basically, she was seemingly in her mind abandoned by Shanks and left behind. We find out later the true realities of what happened, but that caused her basically to do what she ultimately does, where she's essentially singing and using her powers to bring everyone into a matrix, or if you can't get that reference, think of like Eternal Tsukuyomi from Naruto. Essentially, when you come into her dream world, she can make everything, you know, ideal. Of course, some people, once they find out, wait, I'm in a dream world, I didn't sign up for this, I don't want this or whatever, but nevertheless, essentially using her musical abilities to put everyone into a dream world. Oftentimes when you're driving your car, when you're on your bus ride, when you're on the train, when you're on a bike, when you're exercising, when you listen to music, it really can put you in another place. Like, if I'm exercising, if I'm driving my car and I'm listening to that right song, I'm not there right there. I am somewhere else. So that's something of a metaphor of what this music does, but literally because it's devil fruit power for all of these people that get trapped in Uta, who is ultimately the antagonist, and you could argue villain, although she's just misguided, because we find out that basically when she was younger, she was a part of the red-haired pirates. Essentially, she was like what Brooke is, you know, the musician, so to speak. She was Shanks's daughter, which, big spoiler alert, she's technically not Shanks's daughter. However, one day when they went to this island that has a lot of musical aspects to it and whatnot, they wanted her to stay. They had her singing a whole bunch of songs, and they sang this one song in particular that awakened some type of monster demon that basically destroyed the entire island. Shanks and his crew, in order to not have her take on that burden and whatnot, basically told this older gentleman, hey, when she wakes up, and for everybody for that matter, you say, Shanks and his crew did this to this island. We did this. We're the ones that destroyed it because we're pirates. And dipped off crying into the sunset. But from Uta's memories initially, she thought, oh, he just abandoned me and he blew up this island and left me. Like, he's a real piece of crap. Although we even find out later on that there was even more to that, and eventually Uta did understand the truth and whatnot. But going back into this whole allegory of the music industry, one of the things that she's trying to do is bring everyone into this matrix and stay up continuously so she could keep on bringing these people and having them live their fantasy until ultimately she dies, so to speak, I guess you would say, from sleep deprivation, which would in turn kill everyone in the dream. And she is taking these mushrooms, these magic mushrooms, essentially to keep her going. So think music industry, how a lot of artists, they get trapped in touring and going through that whole crazy life, and they start abusing substances and whatnot to continue on crafting and creating music. That's an integral part of the music industry, and that's something very, very heavy that Uta is showcasing in this film. This movie, from top to bottom, it was showcasing darker ideologies, darker imagery than what you're seeing on screen. You're seeing a lot of colorful things. You're seeing this relationship between Luffy and Uta. You're seeing the Straw Hats. You're seeing Uta's relationship with Shanks and them. Beautifully done. Like, I ain't gonna lie, it had me tearing up a couple different times. The ending of the movie, again, spoiler alert, Uta passing away, that just had me in tears. I'm not even gonna lie, that had me in tears. Seeing the red hair pirates going off with the casket and then Luffy and whatnot. I'm really hoping that Oda somehow ties this all in and that this is canon to the manga, and next thing you know, Uta is I'm-sama or something, because she was such an interesting character and it was just so freaking sad of an ending to the film. But nevertheless, it just felt like there was a massive allegory, basically metaphor of the music industry, the life of somebody that is a, you know, downtrodden person that find solace in music and making people happy with the music, but because of their troubles, they ultimately fall into the darkness, so to speak. And I really appreciated the deeper messaging. I don't know if anybody really got that from the film, but based on my knowledge of the music industry, based on everything I know, connecting the dots, considering this movie was one big music piece in general, it fit. The action in this film, for the most part, considering it's like either the Navy fighting with randos, or, you know, Shanks and his crew backing down the Navy a couple different times. One of the most epic scenes, bar none, was when Shanks was like, anybody want to take this little girl, my daughter, from me, you're gonna die. And he uses his conqueror's hockey and has even Fujitora have to sheath his sword again, realizing, oh, we can't fuck with this right now, especially there's people around, a lot of people are gonna die. That was easily the most epic moment, and probably the most epic moment of Shanks' entire run in the story. I love how, now that I think about it, Oda had Shanks do something similar in the manga with him using the Conqueror's Haki from his ship. I don't want to spoil too much on that aspect, but yeah, Oda, genius. Also want to note, in case you missed it, in the final clash where Luffy's trying to break through to Uta, we get a glimpse of Gear 5 Luffy. They didn't want to give it all away, so they kind of showcased it and the shadowing and the energy and all that stuff, but really nice little Easter egg of Gear 5 Luffy, his first technically anime appearance. That was dope, and seeing him team up, even though he wasn't in the same room as Shanks, you know, they were in different realms, different dimensions. That was dope as well. Overall, again, I freaking love this movie. It was my favorite One Piece movie I've seen. I can wholeheartedly say that. The way they utilized music, the way they utilized the whole musical idea was fascinating. They tried something different. It feels like where Dragon Ball Super tried something different with the superhero film of, let's do 3D CG, let's try that. This film tried to do something different with, let's incorporate music in every aesthetic, but make a really compelling story that utilizes the music so it doesn't just feel forced. And they succeeded tenfold with this film. But let me know what you guys think. If you've seen One Piece Film Red, how did you feel about it? How did you feel about Luffy and Uta's relationship? How did you feel about Shanks and Uta's relationship? Did you shed tears? And where do you rank this film in comparison to all of its predecessors? Again, I love this movie. I highly encourage you to watch it and make your own judgment. Don't go off of just, it looks a lot of musical, or people on the internet told me. There's so much more to dig in, and this was just my first watch, and I found a lot of substance beneath the plot that is already really beautifully done and tragic at the same time. That's all I have for this one. I'm ForneverWorld, and as always, people, have an awesome day. Subscribe and hit that bell to get all notifications. And One Piece Film Red for the win. Amazing film. One of my favorite films. Best One Piece film.